Hi there, Paul Thompson here from Spitfire Audio. I'm very excited today to show you Aperture Strings. It's really innovative and it works on the basis of the aperture, an imagined aperture in sound. So I'm going to start playing in a minute, but I'll just explain how this works. It's a single mic perspective, but we have designed it so that at the very, very bottom of the dynamic range, you're hearing a tiny, tiny string section where the mics are much closer in. And then as you open up the dynamic range, either by playing louder on the short note patches or by moving your mod wheel up or your dynamic controller up, you start to hear more players be gradually introduced into the ensemble until when you reach the top, you're at the full symphonic section. Now, this gives you a really interesting way to control the dynamic of what you're playing. And I'm just going to jump straight in so you can hear exactly what I mean. There are three main patches in the library. The first one is this main Aperture Strings. So the lowest dynamic available is a new set of recordings that we've made specifically for this, using just 5 players and mixing the kind of close mics in with the tree to get a really intimate sound in the hall. We've also presented all of these new recordings on their own in a single patch called the pinhole ensemble, which is a kind of reference, a throwback to the idea of the pinhole camera. The third patch is called refractions, and that is basically a kind of automated swell and then die away. It's a way for you to be able to play these strings just using your 2 hands on the keyboard. You don't have to worry about any controllers. And what we've done is we've pre-recorded these beautiful kind of arcs of sound that gradually swell up and then die away. The library has 21 articulations. It's presented in the free Contact Player software, so there's no need to own the full version of Contact to use this. And it was recorded in our home from home at Air Lyndhurst Hall in London. So let's start by looking at the long notes. So you're getting an immense amount of dynamic range here. And it's not just because the players are playing softer at the bottom and louder at the top. It's because at the very bottom, we're changing the actual perspective as well, because you're kind of zooming right in to this tiny, tiny group of players. But also, as the number of people playing increases, the kind of density of the sound and the weight of the sound increases as well. You've got the full vibrato control all the way through the range from the very bottom, right the way through to the top. We've got the strings recorded with the mutes consordino, and that sounds like this. We've got our favourite articulation for the strings, the flautando, this really beautiful, very soft, fast-moving bow that gives you this kind of glassy sound. Just absolutely magical. And also down the bottom end here as well. And also because we're moving the bow so fast in this flautando, you're getting a real increase in the sound of the rosin on the strings, and that adds such an amazing character to the sound. We've got these fantastic harmonics. Let's check out the tremolo. It's just fantastic. This is unlike anything I've ever heard before and ever played with before. It really is quite extraordinary to play. Let's jump to the short notes now. Now these work in exactly the same way, but instead of being the control of the sound being driven by the dynamic mod wheel or CC1 as it is by default in the library, but also on here you can reassign that to any CC number that you want. But instead of being driven by the dynamic control, it's being driven by velocity. Fantastic. Pizzicatos. And the col legnos as well. Now, if I go back to spiccato, if you want more control over these short notes and you want to control them instead of by velocity from the CC map or the dynamic controller here, you can easily do that by clicking that radio button. And then, as you can see, it just blends very, very smoothly across the whole range from the tiny, tiny string section at the bottom through the other three sections all the way to the top layer. So we can look at just the pinhole ensemble on its own. Now, because the pinhole ensemble was designed to be the very bottom layer of everything, it was simply recorded very softly. And what we've done here is to give you an element of dynamic control using kind of scripted thing with EQs, filters, and using the control of the mod wheel or dynamic controller as well. So just check out how that works. So it gives you a really natural, very beautiful ability to control the dynamic of what you're playing within this and just give you that extra element of musicality while you're performing. And again, you've got that across all of these sounds. If you want real, a really kind of magnified idea of dynamic, you can also use the expression controller, which operates in all our libraries as a kind of additional volume controller. And that can give you an extra dimension of control as well. What's really interesting is using these short notes, taking a recorded very quiet sound, but then allowing you to vary the apparent volume of it. So it's quite counterintuitive to what you're used to hearing, which is when the sound gets louder, the timbre changes and it becomes a different kind of sound. But here, the timbre stays the same, but the sound is getting louder and softer, and that gives you a really useful and interesting sound to use. And that works the same for the pizzicatos. Finally, let's look at the refractions. Now you've got a variety of different options here. If I push the variation slider along, that's the fastest variation. But if I take it all the way down to the bottom, that's the slowest variation. And we've got that across all of these different sounds. So if I pop that back somewhere in the middle. And even with these beautiful harmonics. And even the trems. And there's so many complex things going on in these sounds because you're going from such a tiny number of players. The mics are kind of changing and you're going out with the number of players out into the room. The room is being excited more. And then as it comes back in again, the sound kind of closes down again. Very, very useful and interesting sound. So going back to our main patch and the main long sound, I'm going to show you as I go up the dynamic control from the individual soloist, which sounds like this, through to the next layer, which is approximately twice as many players, through to the third layer, which is a more kind of chamber-sized string group, and then up to the top layer, which is the full symphonic section. And those have been seamlessly blended so that you can just move through them very, very slow. If I put the vibrato up, so we're not changing it, the only thing we're changing now is the dynamic control. So that's Aperture Strings, a really unique sounding library which we've recorded some fantastic new material for. Really fun, creative tool to add to your music making arsenal. Thanks very much for watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.